Hi, welcome to Teach Me Marketing, where I'm going to be asking random but really smart people on Twitter to come and teach us the things that they're best at. That's going to be focused on D2C and retail digital marketing strategies. And today I'm joined by Travis Bichel, an expert in Google Ads and SEO, which is a killer combination for any marketer. And I hope you can learn some of the things and apply them to your business that we talked through today. The way I'm thinking about SEO is it fair to say it's like a two-pronged strategy? One, we want to create content that our potential customers are looking for. And two, we want to tell Google and the search networks how to find it and make sure that they're reading the right information and aligning those two together. And obviously there's a lot of tactics that go in both of those camps, but would you say that is the name of the game?
Yeah, I like to break it out into those two buckets. I call them technical SEO, which you can define as building the scaffolding, the skeleton of any given page should adhere to core principles that directly feed into any search engine and give them a unified, cohesive way to read your page or your website. And if you do that well, then you're giving Google quite a strong signal that's hard to misinterpret. And then that's just the process that should be applied to any page, whether it's homepage, PDP, blog post, standalone content piece, whatever it might be. And then the content side is, yes, that longer term investment in producing, expert, authoritative, trustworthy, useful content that people are attracted to. And if every piece of content is adhered to that same scaffolding and that same framework, then it's out of the box, ready to go.
Travis, thank you so much for joining. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, excited to be part of this.
And before we dive in, just tell us a little bit more. I know you're a fellow Google Ads expert and also an SEO, so all things search. You want to tell us a little bit about your background and experience in the space?
Yeah, sure. I've been practicing in advertising and digital advertising for about a decade now. I started off at a couple agencies in the Midwest, and about 5 years ago ventured out on my own and partnered up with a friend to create just a different breed of agency. So we created Eldorado Group together. And then I also like to help people just intrinsically. So I have kind of my side business, T Bichel Media, where I try to help kind of demystify Google Ads and SEO for folks. So I kind of have still the agency chops and also kind of the smaller scale educational and assistance as needed.
That's awesome. So you must really, really enjoy it. What was one of the first things that you really found yourself loving, either in SEO and Google Ads? I was like, yes, I want to continue doing this.
I think with Google Ads, I was involved back in the day before there were even conversions. So, but for me, it was instantly captivating, the feedback loop that you could put forth a term, a phrase, and see how people are searching, modify and attract people in kind of an incrementally better fashion. I think that's remained constant, even with all of the changes over the last decade to Google. But that feedback
Absolutely.
loop just kind of had me hooked from day one.
I love that. It's funny. That's the same. Because when I worked at Google, we were split by lead gen and e-commerce. And I always said that e-commerce was better because of how quicker that feedback loop is, someone's
Right.
buying right away typically, versus lead gen could take 90 days for a conversion to come through. So that's
Sure.
that's I love that we have that in common. Like, you could test so much, you could just see results so fast.
Yep.
Should I have similar expectations for what we're about to do with SEO and Shopify, or is that a longer game?
I think it's certainly longer. I like to use the analogy of, do you want an apple today or a fruit producing apple tree in a year? And that's what SEM or paid search advertising is you can tomorrow start bringing quality people to your website. And that's fine, but you're going to be able to enjoy your apples so long as you pay for them. If you want that long-term investment and you are willing to wait for the maturity of that tree, so to speak, then you put forth effort into the technical construction of page by page of your website, and you dedicate yourself to building quality, authoritative, trustworthy content. And then you have that perpetual eventually zero cost traffic that you can enjoy, in perpetuity.
Yeah, really well said. I love that analogy. Before we dive in, I just I want to ask, like, on the agency side, selling things like that, like when I was at Google, I was selling YouTube and like building your brand, kind of similar to what you're talking about, like invest now, see it come through later. On the SEO agency side, I feel like there's a perception of like not snake oil, but like because of I could see people taking advantage of the fact that you don't see performance right away.
Yeah.
Is that something? I'm sure that's something you do. Like that's
Yeah,
a known
it's
thing, I
funny that
imagine.
you say snake oil because it's probably, if I'm entertaining the prospect of a new client, I try to nip that in the bud. I use that exact word. I say I feel really frustrated because there have been a lot of bad actors over the course of the entire age of the internet that have been snake oil salesmen, and unfortunately that's eroded the baseline trust of SEO as a process. And
Hmm.
so I try to just say, you know this is an investment. Let's unpack all of the intricacies, because it's important for you to understand what I'm doing or what a team is doing on your behalf so that you can be bought in. And this is not going to be a 7-day ROAS.
Hmm.
It's not a ROAS game in the short term. So if we can get people bought into that concept of a long-term investment, people will spend 10, 20, 50K on a website refresh or a total rebrand. They're not looking for that, return on
Right, right.
investment in a 14-day window. So it's more akin to that. And I try to be just as transparent down to the nitty gritty as possible, in the hopes that candor builds trust, builds buy-in, helps educate people, and helps them, be an equal partner in helping their business grow.
I love that. And I think the way you approach this audit or baseline report that we'll go through in a minute captures that. It's educational and it's showing what's important and how we can get there. So I love how you're approaching that. In prospecting and onboarding, I think that's really important. As a business owner, I think it makes so much sense to weed yourself off of the paid media dependency and like build this foundation for the future. So that's why I'm really excited about it. Like, I've only been in advertising, and I think there's just so much opportunity to scale things organically. In
Yeah,
a nutshell,
I
oh,
completely
go ahead.
agree. I think it's really important because it's all in the, to me, it's cousins, SEO and SEM, and it's all under the umbrella, the relationship of getting your business or your brand discovered.
Hmm.
So, one is more costly than the other, and one has the lower cost option has the ability to help your brand or your company get discovered kind of forever. So yeah, that diversification I think is important.
Absolutely. So the way that and I've been only been thinking about this for like 2 weeks, but the way I'm thinking about SEO is it fair to say it's like a two-pronged strategy? One, we want to create content that our potential customers are looking for, and two, we want to tell Google and the search networks how to find it and make sure that they're reading the right information and aligning those two together. And obviously, there's a lot of tactics that go in both of those camps. But would you say that is the name of the game?
Yeah, I like to break it out into those two buckets. I call them technical SEO, which you can define as building the scaffolding, the skeleton of any given page should adhere to core principles that directly feed into any search engine and give them a unified, cohesive way to read your page or your website. And if you do that well, then you're giving Google quite a strong signal that's hard to misinterpret. And then that's just the process that should be applied to any page, whether it's a homepage, PDP, blog post, standalone content piece, whatever it might be. And then the content side is, yes, that longer term investment in producing, expert, authoritative, trustworthy, useful content that people are attracted to. And if every piece of content is adhered to that same scaffolding and that same framework, then it's out of the box, ready to go.
us through some of these KPIs? Some of them are new to me, and I'd love to hear your take on them.
Yeah, sure. So domain authority is a construct put forth by Moz, a preeminent SEO tool and authority. It's a logarithmic scale from 1 to 100, 100 being top notch, 1 being we just started out. And logarithmic in the sense that it's far easier to grow from like a score of 20 to 30 than it would be to go from 70 to 80. It gets kind of incrementally harder. But it predicts the ability for a website like magicpopmike.com to surface and to compete on search results pages. Page authority is similar. Domain authority is your entire website. Page authority is the same calculation, but for individual pages.
I see. And that's available to find within Search Console?
Domain authority is not within Search Console. Moz offers a free tool if you don't want to pay for kind of all of the bells and whistles. Over time, you can kind of, I think it's up to 3 reports a day you can generate, but you can kind of gut check your domain authority over time. You're going to have, it's going to be a more fruitful endeavor should you subscribe to it, but you at least have that ability to kind of gut check an independent non-Google source for how you're performing.
See, non-Google is probably really important there. And you have that number for me, right?
I do. Yep.
You pulled it for me.
Yep.
So 1 out of 100.
That's where you are right now. So only one way is up. Only one way up from here. So
all right. So there's a good baseline there.
Ways to grow, but I think this is great because it shows you will be able to see your performance increase quicker in these early days, and that can be super exciting.
But it's not saying that I'm not showing up. Like I do, see, like when I do search for like very literal specific brand terms, it does show up. So this is thinking more like beyond brand and into other things. Yeah.
Yep. And I think a domain authority, I think another way to think about it is how authoritative is your website? And that's predicated on a lot of things: usefulness of content, construction from a technical perspective, but also, we won't get into it too much, but inbound links. So over time, if you're creating link worthy content, that will happen kind of naturally, passively, but also there's proactive partnerships that you can forge where other authoritative, they've been around for 5-10 years, brands and entities can link back to you, and that intrinsically strengthens your domain authority.
I see. I've heard of backlinks, but that makes it a lot more useful. Like that makes sense. It's going to boost my authority because people are linking to me. Gotcha.
Yep.
You want to go through visibility or ROI?
Yeah, organic visibility is just really unpacking Search Console. I think that's a great way to see progress visually over time. You're looking at, metrics we've been talking about for a long time: click volume, impression volume, average click-through rate, and average position. I think that it's also helpful to go down to the individual query. All of these metrics hold for those. And if you're looking at a comparison date range, you can see, am I showing up for X, Y, and Z query more recently than I was historically? And that's a way to kind of prove out performance.
Interesting. So you can sort of target queries with high search volume and be like, I want to go after this for the next 3 months, and then track that progress.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
And then content ROI.
Do you have that here or no?
Yeah, sure. Let's look at that. Might be one to zoom in. Keep going down to the next page. We can talk through some of these things, but so this kind of shows the last 2 months or so. So in orange, we have your average position; in green, your click-through rate; in purple, your impression volume; and blue, your click volume for both web and image results. So the obvious peculiarity is that April 4th date, and then beyond. What I know from you on Twitter is that on that day, you had your PPC Ponderings podcast kind of released with Kirk Williams, and you also kind of offered up your landing page, fed it to the wolves, so to speak. So your podcast had like 3,000 impressions, that tweet, and I think your landing page one had 11 or 12K impressions. Sure. So directional metrics to show where people came from. And so you have that peak in click volume, which kind of petered off within a day or so. But I think the really encouraging thing is that external event that's not SEO in nature has delivered a that purple line at the top there hasn't dropped off nearly as suddenly. So you've
Absolutely.
kind of gotten that residual benefit over the next week.
Awesome. I've also ramped up ads maybe the week after.
Yep.
I'm still suspended on Google ads, funny enough, but Meta and TikTok ads are doing what I always like, what a lot of us say they will, right? Clearly
Yep.
driving search behavior.
Yep.
So this becomes even more important as you're investing in sort of demand generating activities. You've got to be in the SERP. Um,
Correct. Correct.
Even if it's just like that microphone from TikTok, like
Exactly.
that's huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very
So
cool.
this is just a way to kind of gauge some of those baseline metrics over time via Search Console.
I see. Really helpful. ROI efficiency.
Yeah. So for these next two, I think this is where we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of, is my SEO efforts delivering meaningful business outcomes for me? So I look at content ROI efficiency as, if you look at a single piece of content, let's just talk about a blog post, and you invest either the opportunity cost of your own time or you pay someone, you outsource that content development. Let's just say that the value of that piece, the cost of that piece, I should say, is $500. How long does it take for that $500 blog post to attract organic traffic through that blog post and generate $500 worth in sales for you? So
Fascinating.
it's going to be variable, but
I've never thought of putting an ROI on organic like that.
yeah, I think to me that's how you can start to prove out the value of any SEO effort, and it's how I try to hold myself accountable for, I don't want to just deliver you impressions and views and things like that. That's great, but that's what got SEO into the snake oil sales business in the first place. So
Right.
if you want leads, if you want transactions, if you want to build a newsletter, these are things that can have a finite concrete number to them and then be applied to the cost of that investment.
Very interesting. I'm sure this is a whole conversation itself, but how do you even begin attribution on putting
Actually,
sales on a...
it's
Go ahead.
pretty, it can be pretty tight. So the way that I look at it is, I do leverage Google Analytics GA4, and I look at that individual post as an entry point, as a landing page, only for organic traffic. So you can still promote it via a newsletter, and you can still cross-link it in your site. You can promote it on social media. But for people who find it on their own through organic searches, only those transactions get categorized into this content ROI efficiency calculation.
Very cool. What do you shoot? Like, what do you shoot for? Like, breaking even is probably great, right?
Yeah, that's what I look at, is how long does it take to reach that break even point? Because then it's all whipped cream, sprinkles, and a cherry on top after that, so to speak.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, and it's gonna be different for each content piece. But you want to look for an average over time. So if you're producing 5 a month and the lag time is 60 days, in a year's time, can you have learned enough to shorten that 60-day break even to 45 days, for example?
Right. Even just knowing
Yep.
how long it takes is like, again, it's like planting that tree. Like, all right, I'm planting 3 months ahead now.
Yep.
By building out all this content. Super interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
And then the next one's kind of similar, but in terms of organic conversion rate, if you're just looking at organic traffic, you want that to effectively maintain or increase over time. Naturally, as you're putting forth new content, you're going to get spikes in impressions or elevations in impressions. It's going to be like a stepwise approach as you continue to build quality content. And naturally, you're going to attract people who are less purchase oriented or less ready to buy. They're more info seeking. So you may see a depression in that organic conversion rate in the shorter term, but you should see a leveling off and a holding constant over time. And then it should effectively start to rise to a certain level as you continue to attract more people to the brand.
I see. So this helps you keep true to your goals of wanting to drive sales with these content, because I'm sure you could put up stuff to capture like high volume but low quality traffic, this helps
Exactly.
keep you focused on the goal.
Exactly. And people love to write about trends and the latest thing, and that's fine, but I think it's important to have an honest conversation with yourself about how cheap, in the quality sense of the word, is that traffic.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
if you're latching on to HBO Max these days and the transformation to Max, cool. You're going to rip, a decent chunk of traffic for the short term, but are they really interested in buying this microphone? You know?
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
And then the
Engagement
last,
time and yeah,
yeah,
go
the
ahead.
last two are, I think, helpful. They're the softest metrics, but I think it's important, especially as you're talking about content pieces, so articles, blog posts, new standalone pages. How useful is it to people? So let's measure that. We can look at a combination of dwell time on page and scroll depth, and especially the cross section of the two can give you an
Mm.
idea of, especially if you're calculating your time on page by average read time. So it's in US, it's roughly 200 words a minute can be read. So if your blog post is 1,000 words, then it would take someone roughly 5 minutes to consume that. So what's the average? Are we getting to that 250 mark? Is that 250 word mark? Is that an appropriate place to then potentially seed a natural call to action? So
Mm.
there's ways for this to kind of directionally point back to revenue, but it's a helpful thing to see how useful is your content. Are people scanning it? Are they reading it in full? What's kind of the makeup there?
That is so cool. Like trying to identify the spot where people fall off and then put a CTA or something to continue to scroll.
Yep.
That is wow. And yeah, tying it back to word count. That's why like SEO is always just like so far more sophisticated than some of the paid stuff. And like these things take time and they're like so thought out.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated by it. So thank you for putting all this forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
And
Um,
has maybe just while we're here, like has GA4 made this harder or easier? I know that some of this engagement stuff has changed, right?
I think in some ways, like out of the box, I think GA4 is defining an engaged session or engaged user as at least 10 seconds or converted or had at least 2 pages or screens visited. So already there's a certain, I would say, elevation of using
Yeah.
analytics where you're putting quality of visit right in the forefront of people's minds, which I really like. And then I think the ability to create custom events where you have that cross section of maybe time on site plus scroll depth as a minimum threshold to define your engagement, that's kind of been able to be persistent across, Universal and now GA4. So I haven't had any issue kind of with the transition.
That's awesome. One of 1 million. It's great.
Yeah. I have my gripes, but we can save
Of
those.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And then new users just
Yeah, new users, it kind of comes with a caveat, a grain of salt, especially with cookie deprivation as an inevitability. It may be more difficult to track this over time. Plus, with privacy, things done by Apple, it's difficult. But for what you can see on a short window of time, it's a good gut check to see this new post that I just put out and I haven't yet promoted it. How is the breakup of people? Are they people that already know me, or am I attracting 75, 85, 90% new people through this new piece of content that I've delivered?
I
That
see.
can be just a helpful gut check, I think.
Cool. And when you're doing this at scale, like you're believing in this and it becomes a flywheel, you're creating new content,
Yep.
and like an assembly line sort of thing. Are you viewing these metrics on a macro level? Like have you set up some sort of dashboard? Is there a really good way to see this? Or are you going and like doing like filtering each time or like looking at specific pieces? Like how do you think about it when you're doing this at scale?
Yeah, it is helpful to look at it through, like I do create for folks that I work with a visually oriented dashboard, and I typically am looking at a 90-day window. So it's a 90-day look back, which I think intrinsically coaches people to think more longitudinally.
Mm.
And when we look at things like content pieces, then the report itself, that widget, so to speak, is already filtered by your blog posts or by your content pages or whatever it might be, and pulling in revenue to those. So you can see in the last 90 days, that new blog post generated 200 in sales, and that new blog post generated 450 in sales. Maybe then you can dive in at a more micro level, but you're able to kind of see those things kind of at a glance.
Gotcha. Makes total sense. Is there anything else here you want to chat through?
Nope.
Perhaps actually.
Yeah, we
Keywords.
can scroll through it, make sure. I think maybe if you pause for a second here, this is really interesting for the top ranking keywords there. I found interesting that Moz picked up on, these are the two keywords that you're ranking for through their eyes: Tripod for Magician and Pops Magic, which is kind of an old timey magic shop. So both of those, neither of those are particularly relevant to the brand. Right. And that kind of right there starts to point at the need for better clarity in your page title, in your meta description, in your URL structure, in your header hierarchy. Those are things that are going to, in theory, avoid these over time, not fully, but create clear signals for Google.
Absolutely.
Or any search engine.
Or I should start a magic company, but
or that, yeah,
that's harder. Yeah.
maybe you can get Pops Magic to get you an inbound link, and now you're really cooking.
Seriously, but that's fascinating because I have seen organic pick up. I haven't tied it to anything, and if it's this, then it's kind of junk traffic. I mean, yeah, it's not. That's probably not going to convert.
Some of it's unavoidable, but yeah.
But these are the top ranking. You're saying
those are the top two that Moz picked up on. You know, if you try into Search Console, you're going to see your branded name. You know, you're going to be in the one spot, and other variations are going to be in those first, top 5 to 10 slots on average. But these are the two that you have been ranking for longer term through that kind of non-Google entity.
I see. Cool. So we did. Yeah, so let's hop over to, just in the interest of time, some of the recommendations that you've made and opportunities. And we'll talk through them, and then we'll probably implement some of these, and then we'll check back in a couple of weeks and see how we're making progress.
Excellent. So when we think about technical SEO, there are kind of these 5 core elements. They're not the only elements, of course, but these are the things, that scaffolding, that skeleton that I talk about. They're these 5 elements that kind of are universally important to any search engine that is trying to discern what your page or your site is all about. So you've got your page title, your meta descriptions, and your URL structure. Those are the 3 elements that compose your search listing. And then on page, your header hierarchy and appropriately seating your core queries within your body copy reinforce that structure for Google and give a clear signal. Other factors that are not to be glossed over that matter is word count. You can't be pumping out 200-word blog posts and expect to rank well over time. Interlinking is within your own website, and it signals to Google that if everything points back to your homepage, of course, this should be the top thing that's surfaced for your brand name. But maybe your services page, has the second most links pointing to it from your own website. That should potentially be the next most prominent thing. Perhaps it's the indented second link on your search page. So that's important too.
All right.
And then inbound links, we've talked about. There's the passive way to kind of just create good content and hope people link to it, or the kind of more proactive, this is a partnership. Can we kind of cross-reference each other's sites? Kind of digital PR, for lack of a better phrase.
Gotcha. Just one question there, if you're running on social platforms, organic or paid, do those count as inbounds?
It's kind of one of those, this is kind of a black box that I can't see into, but those entities have a domain authority kind of reinforcing things of 98. Right. So they're the best that they could possibly be. So what I'll say is, if you're in the mode of creating quality content, absolutely disseminate it across your social platforms. Because if Google does consider them, then you're only helping yourself.
Gotcha.
I think even Google, the official line will be, they're not a factor, but I've seen
Sure.
evidence to the
But
contrary.
even when I search for my brand name, I'm seeing my TikTok videos come up in the SERP as well as
Yep,
YouTube Shorts. So even if it isn't helping inbound here, like it's helping me own more real estate on that first page.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and TikTok and YouTube, especially with the advent of Shorts, has risen in prominence to kind of
Hmm.
almost transform the nature of a search page.
Yeah, yeah, it's something to definitely pay attention to.
Yep.
And then I like how you have alt tags here. Like whenever
Yeah.
I upload an image, I always see the option: should we be taking it seriously and putting stuff in
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, it's one of those things where Google doesn't promote it at, or any search engine won't promote it as a primary ranking factor. But number one, it helps you remain ADA compliant for those with,
Mm.
alternative visual capabilities, or screen reader usage. It helps you kind of fall into that, which is a factor in terms of usability for Google. And it also has the benefit where if you have alt tags, which just describe what the image is that we're looking at, and then titles, both represent opportunities for you to start appearing more readily in image search results. So that can be a way to bring organic traffic into your brand, and it helps you command more SERP real estate. And it is a minor ranking factor for Google that is often overlooked, but one of those
Yeah,
things where leave no stone unturned.
I could absolutely see that. Cool. So those are the things we want to optimize, and this is works for Shopify, but also clearly like any website
Yep.
has all these things, and we want to make
Yep.
sure we're covering those
Absolutely.
bases.
Squarespace, WordPress, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, Shopify. Um, I've kind of implemented across just about everyone.
Awesome. I know you pointed out some clear things for me
Yeah.
to change. Let's chat through these. I'll make the changes offline, and then the next time we chat, we'll have this updated and see what it's done. But if you want to chat through some of the call
Yeah.
outs you had for me, I'd love to hear them.
So this is just the homepage, but this is the technical SEO process that really should let you be leveraged through every page that you want to be surfaced by Google, every indexed page. So if we start with that meta title, that page title, what's currently in place is Magic Pop Mike official store. Nothing really wrong with that, but I would argue that it's a slightly unclear signal to Google. So the proposed revision would be Magic Pop Mike with the trademark. If that's something you
Mm,
own, it's part of the brand, highlight it. It only makes your search listing that much more prominent. And then put forth what you want Google to understand your website is all about: a phone microphone for digital creators. Perhaps that's not quite the perfect phrasing, but the
hmm
point is, that can be nuanced, but you're putting forth what this brand is all about.
And this
And
is
that,
less like I could see it. I could see this helping not only increase click through rates, but again, it's giving more data. So now I could potentially serve in the future for microphone for digital creators, where in my current title I'm not saying that at all.
exactly right.
Gotcha.
Yep. And then your meta description, which appears below that kind of blue link on a search listing, you have take your audio content, all the way through,
Hmm.
ASMR, UGC, make your voice smooth and clear. It's well written, it's good, um, but I might argue that there's room for improvement. And what I like to do is two things: how punchy can we make the copy, and can we get it to a length where we avoid that ellipsis on most
Hmm.
instances of search listings. So what I've kind of put forth is, and it doesn't have to be grammatically perfect either,
I see.
Magic Microphone built for creators. The minimal portable Magic Pop mic delivers a smooth, clear sound. Enjoy a no fuss wireless connection with your phone.
Hmm.
Probably most of that will, avoid the ellipsis. It tells you what this is all about. It pulls forth some of the USPs a little more prominently.
Yep.
And yeah, so that would be kind of a revision that you could make.
Love that. Love that. Yep. I could see that really standing out more so in the results.
Yep. And then the URL structure, because it's the homepage, there's no revisions. You own the domain. You could be called, XYZ ABC company and still the same thing. The root domain is not really a ranking factor anymore. For subsequent pages that we're talking about, content pages, PDPs, etc., there is more importance to that URL structure past the page path, past that last slash. So we can, not worry about it for the homepage.
Yeah, but that's good to know for blog posts and product pages, etc. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So this part I was really intrigued by.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about header structure, what we really want to be doing is, again, giving Google the best signal possible. So usually what you want to have is a singular H1, a reinforcing H2, and then H3, 4, 5, 6 can be used as it makes sense for that given content piece. The one time to break this rule is the homepage. And the reason for that is many homepages, the objective is to introduce the brand and encourage exploration through your site. So there may be a case made for multiple H2s, but what should never be violated is that order of operations. So it should always be that the H1 appears first, followed by the H2, followed by 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you never push past that H2 again. You can go back up to H3 and then have another H4, 5, 6 under it, et cetera, and do that. But that creates a structure like package for Google to really understand what the page or the site is all about. So here we have really interesting. So your cart is empty, is coded as an H2, best selling, reserved cart, subtotal, a blank H1, and then capture your sound. So already there's a confusion signal sent to Google. We have got a blank H1, so maybe Google doesn't really even know what your website's about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I see that this is indicative of when websites are designed with different style elements, irrespective of SEO importance.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening here, right? This is all getting skipped, and this is now the first H1 and has nothing to do with
the core nature.
I wouldn't want this to be, yeah. And I can't believe I am just noticing this typo for the first time. That's crazy.
I did flag that on the sheet there. I didn't know if that was intentional, if that was part of the brand, but
definitely not.
there's a freebie free to take care of. But
yeah, right.
I think
so this is the capture true sound is in the header image.
It's coded as an H2. Yeah. So I think the important
thing. So you want the H1 to be the first thing? Is that what you said?
No, actually, and that's the cool thing about this is if you want to say something about your brand, maybe you have a tagline, maybe there's kind of some sales oriented or more attractive language, a visual, a call to action button, all fair game. That, leave that top section entirely up to a design team or make it the most attractive first thing you see. But in the background, ensure that all text is coded as P text, not a header text. And then if you were to reprocess this and look at this output, the H1 would be the first thing that's coded. That can come a third down the page, but you're killing two birds. You're staying attractive as a destination page, and you're folding into SEO best practices.
Yeah. Let me make sure I'm following this correctly. So, like the brand is going to want it to be pretty, so put it as a P tag. But you can also increase the font and make it bold, right? You can make it look like it's an H1 to the human, but don't, and then pass your H1 later on wherever it may make sense.
Exactly right. So you some of this gets into the little more of the finessing of your style sheet within your website, and it might require some minor coding experience or pulling in a developer. But the point is you can have kind of an unlimited treatment of different P tags and use those to your heart's content. And you create that style once, and you can now leverage that across every page on your site, create an attractive content block or couple blocks up top, and then still fold into, this structure.
I see. I bet without having never thought about this, naturally you would put a lot of things as H1s at the top of your page. I bet a lot of people are doing this.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is pretty common.
One of the most common things I see. And it's, Yeah, it's you want to make your website visually appealing. Totally get that. But when you're just leveraging the out of the box header options, you run the risk of, inadvertently creating something like this.
Hmm. Really good call out.
So then I just have a proposed here. So if you have um, that content block that you want to be more sales oriented or attractive, have at that. But what I have right at the bottom there, it feels a little bit repetitious, but we've got, let's say you want to be known as the microphone for creators. Then you can fold in some of that brand language in your H2, capture your true sound with a microphone for
Hmm.
creators. Some repetition there, but there's unity between the H1 and the H2. It's reinforcing. It should also call back to your meta title and your meta description and your URL on subsequent pages. But then use H3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s to your heart's content. And you've given like a super streamlined signal to Google of what this page or this
Yeah. Yeah.
domain is about.
I feel like making this change is probably the best bet of showing up more for microphone for creators. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
this isn't like it's a relatively small, easy, instant change. It's going to increase your impression and your click volume that you see in Search Console relatively quickly. But this isn't, obviously all that SEO is about.
Of course. Of
But it's
course.
amazing that such a small change can have such a meaningful impact.
Absolutely. How would I know? So I make this change today. Let's say I hired you. You made this change today. How can I know that the clicks that I start seeing, because I'm also going to ramp up my ads, I'm going to do video, right? Like
Yep.
in 2 months, how am I going to know that this, how can I tie back performance to this? Like, how did I know that this made a change?
It is sometimes difficult to parse that out. But if you're leveraging Search Console, that is a really good way. You can actually filter by query. So if you wanted to just have
Mm.
microphone for creators, and let's pretend that you didn't use that verbiage in any of your demand generation efforts, then you can look at queries that contain microphone for creators and assess that subset of your organic traffic in Search Console over time.
I
That
see.
would be one way to do that.
Cool. I will do that. And then some other things you called out here.
Yeah. So in the body copy, it's not about keyword stuffing, but your core query of Magic Pop Mic appears 11 times on the homepage, 2 thumbs up. But then there are other things that you could consider seeding in very naturally. Synonym of microphone, it appears twice, potentially room for more.
Mhm.
Digital and online have kind of directional purchase oriented intent in kind of the semantics of some of the phrasing that you might attract. Influencers feels like an absolute, and then
Yep.
phone makes and models is another idea. I think you said
Brilliant.
four that it's good for Pixel, Samsung, Galaxy, iPhone, and maybe a
Hmm.
fourth. But calling those out, and good for blank 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 model, um, are
No
just
brainer.
a handful of suggestions there.
Yeah, absolutely right. I'm going to do all of that tonight. And then word count.
Yep.
I'd be curious to hear about your thoughts there.
Yeah. So for the homepage, there's different tools you can use online. The one I used pulled in 537 words. No problem. It's not a hard fast thing. And for the homepage, it can be highly variable. Some people have a very truncated homepage. For other pages like blog posts, PDPs, articles, what I call magnet content pages, where you're talking about at least 500 to 1,000 words, if you're trying to create an authoritative piece for a subject, then you're going to want to hit that 500 to 1,000 word account. Not for PDPs, but for other pages where you're diving into a topic or it is a blog post. So it does matter
Okay.
then. When we
Cool.
talk about interlinks, this is that kind of directional, like reflexive pointing page to page. The homepage
Hmm.
has 91 links on page, 20 are unique. Nothing's really wrong there. But the one question that I might propose is, are you steering people towards a funnel or are you giving them too many options? Is there decision fatigue possibly at play? I'm not saying there is, but that's always a helpful question whenever you're looking at a given page.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you want to just, I say, think of it as a funnel is really interesting.
Yep.
Like learn more by not like just like stacking these things together as opposed to like, yeah, I could see some exit ramps that you would probably want
Right.
to avoid.
And some of them are inevitable, like your footer links are going to be, 5 to 10 links. You got your navigation. So it's not about trying to get this to like 2 links per page, but it's just a thing to kind of always kind of coach oneself through.
Yeah. And I
And
see you
then,
crawling out a lot of links without a title. That's probably a no-no.
yeah, it's one of those
Yeah.
things where, yes, it folds into ADA compliance, but it also is yet another signal to Google of what is this link about? What is it an accurate representation of what's being shown in the button text? So it's just another one, like alt tags. It's an often overlooked thing that is a low hanging fruit, so to speak, to kind of pluck.
Cool. Gotcha.
Inbound links, there's only one that I've found, which is this odd fast domain shop, which seems to be a parked domain. I don't know if that rings a bell for you.
Mm,
But
no.
this would be the effort where if you find partnerships that make a lot of sense, offer that, cross promotion to each other. Can I get a call out on your
Gotcha.
site? I'd be happy to, do you. It's not about affiliate linking. It's just about creating
Hmm.
that kind of symbiotic relationship with folks in tangential spheres.
Cool.
And then
And
alt
then,
tags, 25 images, 4 that are missing alt tags. That's easy cleanup, and 25 without titles. So if you can give it a title, that's where you can start to seed in the name. You could have that as a dash suffix to every title. Again, it's going to kind of start to help you appear in image search results in a cleaner fashion.
awesome. All right, so I've got a lot to do. I'm gonna go ahead and clean all of this up. Thank you so much for pointing them out. Why don't I do those tonight and then we'll come back, review the changes I made, see if it's all clean, and then I know you have a lot here on the content piece, which I definitely want to get into next, but perhaps we save
Yeah,
that for like a phase two after I clean
perfect.
everything up.
Love that. Yep.
Cool. And I'm blown away by this. It's like very practical. It makes sense. A lot of no-brainer things here, and I'm sure there's just way more to do over time. But
Yeah.
kind of get like the foundation in order. Where can people find you if they want to chat and work with you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at tbeshell. So that's TeeBeeshell, kind of a play on my first initial and last name. And then tbeshell.com is kind of where I self promote. So both are viable places to reach out, and love to hear from folks.
Awesome. Highly suggest that you do. You just put on a masterclass. Thank you